Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Choda and welcome to my channel Ignition Time, where I teach you strategies and techniques to raise your mental game, raise your financial game so that we can ignite your wealth and hopefully grow your bank account. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can resume work and still collect the $600 per week unemployment benefits legally. I'll go over three things in this video. The first is I'm going to go over the two ways an individual can actually receive unemployment benefits while working. Yes, this is actually possible. There are two ways. I'll talk about the pros and cons of both ways because there are some aspects to this and this isn't something that everybody is going to be able to do. For example, if you're called back to work full time, there's no chance that you can collect unemployment benefits. So again, this is not going to be applicable for everyone. But again, the goal with my channel is to educate you about your options so that you know what options exist for you. And also I'll talk about, most importantly, what this means for you and which individuals are eligible for these two programs. So the two programs that actually allow individuals to collect unemployment benefits from the state and also the $600 per week federal booster are work sharing programs and partial unemployment insurance benefit programs. So again, work sharing programs and partial unemployment insurance programs. With both situations, you can collect unemployment benefits from the state. In addition to that, you'll be eligible for the $600 per week federal booster, which at the time that I'm recording this training is scheduled to end on the 31st of July. So here's the way the unemployment benefit system works. If you have a full-time job, you're not eligible for unemployment. If you become unemployed, you're now eligible for certain unemployment benefits. And again, the final determination is always made by your state. However, if you do get employed, but if you're only partially employed, in other words, you have significantly reduced work hours, then you could be eligible for unemployment benefits from the state, which would be proportional to the extent of your hours. In other words, if you're fully unemployed, then you would be eligible for more benefits. But if you have some hours from your wages, then your unemployment would supplement those wages. In effect, you would have lower unemployment benefits. So again, if you are working full-time or if you do get your job back, then you're not eligible for unemployment. But if you have significantly reduced hours, there are two options: the work sharing program and the partial unemployment benefits program, which will allow you to get your nominal, your limited wages supplemented by unemployment benefits from the state. And again, at the time I'm recording this video, up to $600 a week federal booster from the federal government. So let's analyze work sharing programs. Work sharing programs are also known as short time compensation or shared work programs. This is a program that your employer should be able to make available to you as long as it is something that they offer. So the way this works is the employer would be able to offer this to a select group of employees, and they would cut the employees' hours by as little as 10%, as much as 60%. So you're looking at a significant reduction in your work hours using the work sharing program. So as far as the business is concerned, they don't have to lay off the worker. They simply reduce the worker's hours significantly, and then the worker remains unemployed, but the worker is essentially partially employed with a significant reduction in work hours. So what would happen to the workers? Would they receive a full unemployment benefit from their state? They wouldn't. They would receive a prorated unemployment benefit from their state to compensate for their lost wages. In other words, they would receive less than they would have received had they been unemployed. Now, in case you're wondering, what is better? Is it the work sharing program or the partial unemployment benefits program? In general, a work sharing program, as long as your employer offers it, is going to put more money in your pocket, because with the partial unemployment benefits program, there's going to be a significant reduction in your work hours for you to be able to qualify for unemployment benefits. So in general, a work sharing program, as long as your employer offers it, is definitely going to be better for you as a worker. Now, there is a caveat. Work sharing programs are not available in every single state throughout the country. They are only available in half the states. On top of that, your employer needs to be offering the work sharing programs. The partial unemployment benefits programs are a little bit more straightforward because they are available in all states and they are not generally dependent on your employer. The work sharing program, on the other hand, needs to be offered by your employer for you to be able to piggyback off of it. Now, because of the added variable of the $600 a week federal booster, which again was a direct result of the CARES Act in March, which by the way was a good thing, because without the $600 a week federal booster, a lot of things would have gone wrong in the economy by now. But because of the $600 a week federal booster, workers who qualify for unemployment benefits through either a work sharing program or through a partial unemployment benefits program would benefit substantially, because they would be getting a prorated amount from the state in addition to the federal booster. So there would be a significant benefit, but it would be a temporary benefit, because again, at the time I'm recording this training, that $600 a week federal booster is scheduled to go away at the end of July. So the benefit is significant, but it's temporary. So back to the work sharing program. How does the work sharing program actually work? Number one, a work sharing program should be available in your state. It is not available in every single state. So you will have to check with your state agency whether a work sharing program is available. Now, the employer, your employer, would also need to submit a plan to the state and get that plan approved before they can officially offer a work sharing program. So there are two variables. Number one, does your state offer a work sharing program? And number two, has your employer actually submitted a plan to the state and been approved for it? And then and only then can they offer you a work sharing program. And after that, you would then be eligible for the partial unemployment benefits with the $600 a week federal booster. So there are a bunch of steps that are involved with the work sharing program. So let's say an individual is in a work sharing program, they're in a state that offers these programs, and they also have an employer, or they work with an employer who does offer a work sharing program, an approved work sharing program, something that's been greenlit by the state. In this situation, let's say the individual is now offered 50% of their hours. In other words, they come back at half the number of hours that they were working before. This individual would be eligible for a prorated unemployment benefit from the state. We're talking payment from the state, and the $600 a week federal booster. Again, the final determination will be made by your state. So if you're not sure whether your employer offers a work sharing program, ask your employer, check with the state if work sharing programs are indeed allowed in the state in which you live. Now let's talk about partial unemployment benefits. This is when you're dealing with the state. Now, in case you're thinking, oh boy, well, I don't blame you, because partial unemployment benefit programs are significantly more complicated than work sharing programs, and you can benefit from partial unemployment benefits only if your work hours have been cut substantially, significantly more, possibly even than work sharing programs. In general, you may have to have more than 60% of your hours cut, because the threshold with work sharing programs is 10% to 60% in general, but you may have to have more than 60% of your hours cut. In other words, you literally have no work. You have very little work, and only then you're eligible for partial unemployment benefits. So a lot of individuals may not even qualify for this. So let's say you were doing a 40-hour work week, but now let's say you're doing 8 hours a week. So that would be 20% of your normal hours. You may qualify for partial unemployment benefits. Again, you'll have to check with your state, because it is the state that makes the final interpretation. So you would have to have a substantial reduction in your work hours in order to qualify for partial unemployment benefits. We're talking a prorated payment from the state in addition to the $600 a week federal booster. So basically what that means is you need to be earning very little money. In fact, according to Michelle Evermore, who's a senior policy analyst at the National Unemployment Law Project, workers, if they want to be eligible for these partial unemployment benefits, must be making less money weekly from their job than they would be otherwise receiving in state unemployment benefits when fully unemployed. So let's say you are unemployed and your state unemployment benefits were $300. You would need to be making less than that from your job. In other words, you would have to have significantly reduced work hours in order to go back and qualify for the partial unemployment benefits. The only thing that really changes the equation here is a $600 a week federal booster, because with that $600 a week federal booster, a person could technically be making wages of, let's say, a couple of $100 a week, then get a prorated unemployment benefit from the state, and then get the $600 a week booster on top of that. So it is technically possible for an individual to be partially employed and to have significantly reduced work hours and also get unemployment benefits. Again, the interpretation will be made by your state agency, so talk to your state. Now, every state varies. In a state like Louisiana, for example, the average weekly unemployment benefit is $211 a week. So you would technically have to make less than $211 a week. I mean, you'd be working just a handful of hours in order to be able to qualify, which would make it much harder for you to qualify. In other words, the pool of individuals who would qualify in a state like Louisiana would be extremely small because they would have to be working very few hours. So again, this varies from one state to another. Also, the benefit formula, in other words, the formula that the state uses to calculate the insurance benefits, the unemployment benefits, varies from one state to another. And what makes this even more complicated is those benefit formulas for the unemployment insurance benefits from the state are not as generous as the formulas for the work sharing programs. So in other words, they are not prorated the exact same way. You get less money. But again, the thing that basically changes the equation right now is a $600 a week federal booster. So let's say your average state unemployment benefit was, let's say, $300 a week. And if, because you're partially employed, you make less than $300 a week, because of the way your state calculates your unemployment benefits, let's say they pay you $200 a week, but because you get the extra $600 a week from the federal booster, which you should be able to qualify for, you do have to talk to your state, that takes your weekly wage all the way close to $1,000, which again is what is significant here, which is what makes this entire scenario of being partially employed and still getting unemployment benefits actually feasible for a lot of individuals. And the last thing that you need to take into consideration is workers need to apply themselves for the partial unemployment benefits from the state. And you know what that's like. Calls, emails, any kind of outreach you do with the state, you can never get through to anybody and you can't get your calls returned because the system is completely overloaded. However, if you have a work sharing program, the benefit process goes through the employer to the state. So work sharing programs in that sense have less hassles associated with them. But again, they are not very common, and you'll need to check with your employer if they offer a work sharing program and if they've actually gotten approval from the state to be able to offer that work sharing program. There you have it, everybody. I hope this was helpful. Now, this may not be applicable to everyone, but now you know more than you did a few minutes ago. So hopefully you can use this information or someone you know can benefit from this. Thank you so much for watching. Please click like. Please click subscribe. Please enable the notification button so you get instant updates from me in the future about important news like this. I release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. I do appreciate you watching. Hang in there. We'll get through this. I appreciate you and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.